Hello and welcome to What Would Jesus Tech? My name is Andrew Noble. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Joel Jacob, and we're glad to be back. We've missed you guys. It's been longer than we had hoped. Sickness on my part, just an inability to schedule things due to taking care of kids who are sick and things like that. And a lot has changed in the world. We're trying to help our listeners and help ourselves use tech, find rest, and glorify God. We're trying to make sense out of our technological world and how Jesus would, live in it wisely, trying to have wisdom when we approach this, not just knowledge, but wisdom. And so today we're kind of trying to catch up on just how much has changed in the last month. How are you feeling, Joel, with how things are going for you and the change since we last spoke?
Yeah, we're just chatting briefly before we turned on the camera, and it's almost like it feels like an age ago in terms of how fast things have been moving and how much has been changing. So overwhelmed. I think a lot of people feel overwhelmed. And part of that is more coming to terms with like, this is just normal. And maybe I'm just like overthinking about what's happening.
Yeah, it's, you've alluded to various types of exponential curves before. You got things like Moore's law, you got things like technologies that are all leading towards convergence in different ways, and we're in the midst of a lot of technologies that are converging, and a lot of things are happening because of that. So let's just go through some of those things as they relate to AI. So I think one of the things that I think a lot of people were excited about a couple weeks ago was Sora, this idea of a video-based AI that you could just type in something and all of a sudden a video would pop out. I think there's a little bit more hype here than reality, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think Sora was announced actually the same time Google released Gemini, which that's another kind of interesting story that we can mention. But part of it, like you said, was it's just an announcement. They didn't actually release it to be used, so maybe it's more of a like diffusion of, hey, Microsoft came out with this Gemini thing, and we're going to release something. On the other hand, if what they are showing is anywhere close to being available, it shows how far we've come in text to video generation in about a year. There's this video that everyone was memeing where it's Will Smith eating spaghetti, and it's about a year ago, and people were like, show me a video of Will Smith eating spaghetti, and like it's all like distorted and everything. And
the
now
AI cannot do it.
Yeah,
as of a year ago.
Yeah, and then now they did it again, and with the new models, and it looks like really legit. And then Will Smith tweeted like, "This is messed up," So it's like that 1 year time frame showed how much is possible, and I think that is a crazy thing. There's a couple like interviews with the CTO Mira Murati, and they're asking like, "Hey, like, what did you train this on?" And they're like not exactly saying if it's like YouTube data or where the data is coming from. There was speculation that it was like game creation data, so like Unreal Engine, but then wherever they're creating it, it's like, what are all the licensing implications? And they're saying it's all open.
What data was used to train Sora?
We used publicly available data and licensed data.
So videos on YouTube?
I'm actually not sure about that.
Okay. Videos from Facebook, Instagram?
If they were publicly available, publicly available to use, there might be the data, but I'm not sure. Yeah. I'm not confident about it.
So that's definitely an interesting undercurrent that's also happening, which is like, well, how do you license different data sources, and who has the biggest data to come out with the best model?
Right, which is why the New York Times is suing OpenAI right now, because they have evidence, and it's just very clear evidence that OpenAI was trained on New York Times articles that they accessed online or however they accessed them without the permission of the New York Times, even though there was conversations where they were trying to reach an agreement, but they never reached an agreement. And yet clearly OpenAI was building their chat GPT on New York Times content, and not only building it on New York Times content, but giving it a high level of verification because it's reliable, right? Like we're always talking about, well, is this AI actually a source of truth? It always seems to make mistakes in various ways. That's one of the ways that professors can catch when their students are cheating, is because it's proper sentence structure, perfect grammar, and yet there's just factual inaccuracies because sometimes that happens. And so obviously a company like OpenAI wants to have good facts in their data. It's garbage in, garbage out when it comes to algorithms. What is the data going in? We'll give it good New York Times data, relatively good. Let's not get into a whole thought piece on. I don't think there's people on the left that think the New York Times is unbiased, and there's people on the right who don't think New York Times is unbiased. Like people don't like the New York Times no matter what side you're on. You're like, oh, it's not hard enough on Trump. Oh, it's too easy on Biden. Oh, it's whatever. Like people hate it. But they've been a legitimate newspaper for many years. The point is that there's a lawsuit and it's gone back and forth now, and you can see some of the defenses that both companies are putting forward, and it's a wild, wild west out here. And it's just going back to this theme of like, do we, a lot of these companies, the way that they have been successful in the past, it has been like a move fast and break things approach. So even locally here in where I am, the tech capital of Canada, Kitchener, Ontario, shout out to Kitchener, Communitech, all my friends around here, they would love me saying that. Part of the corridor of Kitchener, Waterloo, and Toronto. And basically here we had Uber come to our city council, have discussion on whether or not Uber is going to be legitimate and how it might displace jobs from taxi drivers. And so they have that meeting, and the meeting goes well. And a month later is when it was scheduled to be a vote. Well, because the meeting went well, the very next day, Uber just launches in Kitchener-Waterloo without approval from the city, without waiting for it. They're like, well, the meeting went well, so we're just going to go forward with it. And I'm just using that as an example of this, like, we're just going to move fast. We might break things along the way. And yeah, maybe some copyright infringement, maybe the local city council will get bothered, but we're going to be first to market. And that's what matters. And that's what Uber did. And that's just indicative of this kind of approach. Which, not to take shots at you, Joel, and your industry, but that's sometimes happens, right? And I think that's what is happening with AI, is they're all trying to beat one another in this rat race or race towards having the best model to make the most profit. Like OpenAI has made over $2 billion. $2 billion. That's a wild amount of revenue. Like I read that, I couldn't believe it. I was like, are you for real? I like looked up to fact check it. It is real. $2 billion already, OpenAI. So there's a lot of moving parts right now.
Yeah. So I think, listen, on the move fast and break things, it's a cultural paradigm shift, right? Like the EU just dropped another regulation on AI, and it's clear that in that part of the world, they're very much like, okay, we're going to restrict things. India came out with a big ruling that you can't use AI unless it's approved by the Indian government. Yeah. So it's like people are either quick to regulate, or I think on the side in the US and in the West, or I guess North America, it's more like, let's let it incubate a little bit more. We don't want to stifle innovation because we could be kind of killing something before it has a chance to take root. And so that something could be beneficial to our country. And I tend to like fall more in that camp. Like if you look at, the world's most valuable companies today, and they're all tech, and they're all, I think, American, right? So it's like that philosophy has led to the sustained dominance of the U.S. country in the world.
Yeah, I mean, financially successful, to be sure. We just obviously success from a Christian point of view is defined more holistically, not just material success or prosperity in that sense, but what is shalom? What is peace on earth? What is God's will that we pray for it to be done on earth as it is in heaven? That's what we want. And so we need to allow the texts of Scripture and our ethical foundations as humans to guide us, and to maybe not break things. Maybe breaking things is not a good idea, especially when that impacts people's livelihoods and stuff. So just a few other things that have happened. You know, you got Sam Altman versus Elon Musk. You got that whole thing going on. Obviously, Musk is, you know, upset about the direction that OpenAI is going. He used to be heavily involved, an early investor, and now obviously he's on the outs, trying to compete with his own AI. What is his AI doing? Like Grok? Like he's trying to do good stuff with that too, right?
Yeah, I mean, he just announced recently that Grok is going to be full open source, which is also like kind of reinforcing his claim that like these AI open source is a way to prevent some person or conglomerate from holding this power over other people. And that's kind of what his lawsuit is related to. And then there is another Grok. So his is Grok with a K, Grok, and there's a Grok with a Q at the end, which is a hardware innovation where instead of a GPU, they're doing an LPU. So it's like a hardware that's purposely designed for large language models, which allows it to go really fast. And I don't know if you've ever like typed a search into ChatGPT and then seen it just like thinking for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that delay is also a tell that like, hey, this is like not really a person or whatever, when you're having a phone conversation. So you ask a question and then it's like this like delay, and then it finally gives out the answer. So now with this new LPU, it's like crazy fast. And their whole thing is like, we're going to basically create a platform that people can build software on top of. So, and it'll be really fast for you. So it's like, if you want to build any AI product, you're going to build it on our platform, and we'll just charge you like a subscription for your usage, basically, which is like the AWS model for how people use AWS to host their websites. So that's how,
which is
like,
Amazon hosting websites. So just help me understand here, because I'm not as tech savvy as you. So is this a change in hardware or software? Like, is it
yeah, so
physically
Grok,
the data chips?
Yeah, the chips are physically like, so GPUs are, they're pretty multi-purpose. Like they're used for video games for a long time, and it turned out that like, hey, they're also good for processing AI models. So they are pretty multi-purpose. Now this chip that Grok came out with is literally just purpose made for large language models. So it's actually much better in that one aspect. And typically that's a trade-off. It's not going to be great for running other things like video games, but it's going to be really good for, you know, hosting, or what they call is tokens per second, which is like the metric they're using for like evaluating how effective it is. So the other thing that just came out, and I know we're like touching on a couple points, but we'll be able to wrap it all together. Devin.ai came out the other day, and it got really popular on the X platform. People in tech were kind of like, oh my gosh. Because I think from
and it's the software. Yeah. Software engineers, it's coming for their jobs, right?
Yeah, that's the feeling. It's similar to the Sora video topic we mentioned earlier, where it's like people are like, okay, let's ask ChatGPT to code something, and it's like not that great. And then now someone's come out with like a ChatGPT wrapper, which does a little bit more. It kind of like does some coding, then does some error checking, then does some work on based on that error checking. So it's more comprehensive, and to accomplish a coding task, it has gone a lot better. And it still won't replace software engineers today, but the thought is like, well, what happens in like 2 to 3 years, you know? So that's the theme of like, oh man, we really are seeing multiple areas where the pace is just growing really fast. And at the same time, I think the general consensus is we still haven't seen significant disruption. So it's like, yeah.
So this wrapper idea, I've heard it before. So you basically have like some kind of computing ability. What is a wrapper? What do you mean by that? You're not talking about Eminem or Jay-Z.
No, yeah. So I think it's just like a skin, a front end. So it's like behind behind the top layer is actually ChatGPT. So it's just like you're wrapping something around the core product, and then your wrapper does something slightly different, maybe focused on an industry. And then depending on how divergent your layer is, people will say, well, that's just a wrapper, or they'll say, hey, that's actually like something novel and profoundly different, and it's like using something just as like its core platform.
And so this could be, similar to how the internet was created, but then it took a while before we realized how to use it for social media. It's like AI has come out, but some people, they still don't know how to use ChatGPT. Like, even though it's intuitive, they don't know how it can create errors. They don't know how to ask it good questions or what questions to even ask it. Like, I had a conversation with a pastor the other day where he's like, I have no idea how you would ever find like this helpful. I don't understand it. And I'm like, well, you could ask it questions like this. You could send in your sermon to it and say, give me feedback on it. And it will give you feedback based around what generally people online have given feedback to others who are trying to write sermons. Like, it won't actually be, you could literally say to it, here's my sermon. Can you write a prayer to say at the beginning of it? Now, I would never ask it that, and I would never use that, because I don't think you should allow a ChatGPT or AI to write prayers for you. I'd rather have humans writing prayer personally. But you can use it for different things. But like, that's where you could have a pastor AI wrapper for that use case. I've heard from a doctor about the AI implementations there, in that there's a wrapper around AI language processing such that it records the conversation that the doctor has with the patient, and then it spits out, okay, here is a transcript of what was said, but also here's your notes now. So doctors always have to take notes based on every meeting. Sometimes that can take the same amount of time, that documentation, as the meeting itself. And they have to do that in their own time after meeting with the patient, or they're doing it while they're with their patient, and then they're not giving their full attention to the conversation and thinking about it. So it kind of sits there recording the conversation in the background, and then does it all, and it's trained on not just ChatGPT type of a system, but it has all that medical knowledge as well, and knows that kind of language and that sort of thing. So I can understand what you're saying about the wrappers, and that might be, as wrapper type products become more popular, that's where the disruption is going to happen. And we're going to see, oh, there's this software AI bot, or whatever the name, Devin, like Devin is that example where all of a sudden it's, oh, now I see why people were freaking out about AI in 2023, because it has this potential, right?
Yeah. And I think the summary I would say is like, we're still early, but it's also like you can see things moving. Like, people would say we haven't seen large scales of AI disruption yet, but like one example was Klarna saying 2/3 of their customer service is actually using their AI assistant now, and they've saved like $40 million. So it's like, okay, actually we are seeing some areas where it's starting to show it's making a difference in displacing jobs and stuff. And the thing you were mentioning actually around the doctors use cases, for anyone kind of following the industry, it's a term called RAG, which is actually called Retrieval-augmented generation. So what you do is you take a base model, which is like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, and then you upload this unique data set, and then it uses that unique data set as a correlation to its like base model. And then now you're augmenting its capabilities. And then wrappers would basically take that and then put it into a product. So it's like the Devin thing has like a UI, it has a way to interact it has like special output. So now you're like turning it into a product. So what's probably what's happening in that hospital's office is both rag and wrapper. But all of this is maybe like
No, that's
more.
helpful because it's you got to understand sometimes what's behind the screen, right? It's because if you don't understand what's behind the screen, you're going to think it's sentient. You're going to think it has a conscience. You know, you're going to think things that just aren't true. The reason it sounds like a human is because it's trained on human data, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't understand this kind of stuff going on in the background, oh, this sounds smarter than a doctor, sounds smarter than a theologian. This has, like, I talked to, I'm considering PhD studies right now. Who knows if that'll happen for me or not? Updates on future episodes. But I've been meeting with other people who've done PhD studies or are in their PhD, and one person who's in a PhD right now said, "Man, ChatGPT is smarter than my supervisor."
Oof, shots fired.
And I'm like, what? And no one would guess who this individual is that I met with, but I was like, you got to know that sometimes it's wrong. And he's like, yeah, that's true, but what do you mean? Like, like he didn't fully understand the way in which it works. And I'm like, it's going to be based around like blog entries online, and that's different than a peer reviewed article. Like there's just different limitations. But yeah, that the reg stuff you're talking about, that's like the one thing there. Have you heard of magisterium AI?
No, not.
So
no.
I mean, leave it to the Catholics. They think deeply on things. They have an infrastructure. They have created magisterium AI, and I think it has a reg with it. I don't know, based around what you described, because what they do is they have an interface that's like ChatGPT, but you can only ask it questions about Catholic doctrine. If you try to ask it questions like, what should I feed my dog? It'll be like, sorry, we don't answer questions like that. But if you ask it questions about Catholic doctrine, it'll spit out an answer and it'll refer you to areas of Catholic theology. And you can only input like 2 questions per day or whatever. Otherwise, you have to pay for more. So I don't know. They got a whole financial model with it. And I don't know. I think it's interesting that they have very clearly trained their model on Catholic doctrine so that it gives legitimate answers with references, which maybe is a rag, maybe not.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a rag plus a safety layer. The safety layer is like always like, oh, we can't answer that because that's like against our ethics. So that's like, yeah, it's interesting as I hear you talk, I'm like, oh, they're, from the original, hey, it's an LLM. We're seeing all these pieces of the puzzle now coming in, like being built on top and like, stuff like that. And I guess
is this
my
the
question...
same as multimodal? No, you keep going, but like you kept talking about multimodal. And I'm like, now is this multimodal? Is this what we're talking about now?
I know the multimodal is another thing, which is still relevant, but it means that it's not just text, it's images and audio. So multiple like senses, like think of your 5 senses. It's like multiple senses. So that's like another layer of development. But I think the question actually I was steering towards is, okay, we've seen like all of this stuff happening in the AI world. It's only been, I feel like weeks, since we've last talked and I've spoken to people about it. Do you feel like the Christian space is moving as fast as like the general space, when it comes to AI, like, or you feel like we're still like largely out of the conversation?
That's really interesting, because I think like a few things have happened recently that in the Christian and tech space, you have, like, we've had on our podcast Jason Thacker before, and he is focused on technology. Wrote the book The Age of AI. Wrote another couple books on and engaged in some scholarly work around the digital public square. But now he's been promoted into his role at the research, I'm going to screw up the name, but the Evangelical Research Institute. It's a branch out of the Southern Baptist, but essentially he got promoted and now his podcast isn't going to move forward anymore. You also have someone like Chris Martin. He's been big on social media, like in the sense that he's done a lot of research on social media, and he's stopped writing on it. He had a weekly newsletter that had thousands of subscribers, and he's stopped that newsletter and he's focused on fiction now. And then you have like other, like even some of the podcasts on Christianity and technology, like Device and Virtue, solid guys there. Again, it's been a while since they've updated their episodes and things like that. So there's just less. I see some of the people that are more that I trust and have some reliability and credentials to me. I see them like moving on. But at the same time, I do see there's like some really good research happening when it comes to like transhumanism from the Christian perspective. And I do see a lot of good work, like the Catholic, again, like Catholics have the value of an institutional structure that's centralized. And so they have devoted a research arm to AI.
Interesting.
And so like, you think about in Canada, I'm part of the Fellowship of Evangelical Baptists. I'm part of a denomination, but that's not made up of that many churches compared to all the Catholic churches. The resources are limited. They can't, there's like 5 people on staff in my denomination, whereas the Catholics have like a whole central hub. And so what they have done is they've have this whole research arm, and some of it I've communicated with like just personally because I've appreciated some of their work, like Jordan Wales. He's written some really good stuff on AI and on what it means to be human. And some of the stuff that, I'm a Protestant. So if you think about Christianity, you got 2 branches. Well, we could talk about Orthodox, a 3rd branch, but you got Protestantism and you got Catholicism. And we do align on a lot of different things. And they've written some good stuff about ethics of AI and anthropology. Human anthropology is really big on this. And yeah, there's people doing PhDs in this. There is some good work being done. But you don't necessarily hear that much about AI on the Gospel Coalition. Christianity Today has like various pieces about it, and some of it's good, but
yeah, I think maybe it's like, when it first was announced, it was like how do we think about this? Let's process like the impacts to our society, the ethics, and a lot of that conversation has maybe like happened, even if it hasn't like fully been fleshed out. People are like, okay, I have like a starting point, right? We've seen articles and stuff. And now in like the development tech space, people are building things, and a lot of the innovation is happening on like, okay, let's take it from what it was last year to now something even more profound. And then eventually we'll hit another kind of moment where it's
Hype
noticeably different than it was when it first got introduced. And then the church will be like, oh, whoa, now let's talk about it again. Right. And I think there are Christian builders in the space. But even for me, like I don't have a central place where I can go to and be like, what is a church doing with AI? Right. And I feel like this Catholic one might actually be the biggest, right? Or have the most organization around how they structure their research and who's doing what in the space. And that could just also be from a lack of my integration into a formal like community.
Well, even it's interesting, like there's a network called Faith in AI. And the interesting thing about that story is that the founder no longer identifies as a Christian. And so has said, and they were always kind of a multi-religious group, like it was Faith in AI rather than Christian faith in AI, if you will. And they even talked. I'm part of the Facebook group of some of the members, just like as a conversation hub. They have a Facebook group, and they were talking about changing the name because maybe faith isn't the best name for it anymore, because they want to be inter-religious dialogue about these kinds of things. So yeah, like you're seeing that kind of stuff. I know Faith Tech, they're solid. They're doing some good work when it comes to AI, but it does seem like something that needs more focus. And the evangelicals came out with a statement on AI in 2019, and the Southern Baptist Convention just last year in 2023 like affirmed that statement again. They're like, yes, we affirm that this statement is a good statement. And it's a good statement. Like, I think it's solid, and it differentiates some really important categories between things like humans and robots and that sort of thing. But yeah, we need more, and we need to keep thinking about it. And we'll see where it goes. I think I lack awareness too, to what, the more you learn, the more, like, I just was meeting with some guys from Apologetics Canada, and there's two people who work for Apologetics Canada, and they're doing their PhD in relation to AI. Like,
oh, okay. Well, that's encouraging.
Like, yeah. So even just in our small part of the world in Canada, there is this kind of work going on. I think there's always the question of, like, how do we integrate it back to the engineer? Think back to not Jason Thacker, to John Dyer. He met with us, and in his book, he described Christian entrepreneurs at these Bible tech companies having this hopeful entrepreneurial pragmatism. That was his, like, 3-word phrase to define Christian engineers. It's hopeful. Yeah, we can do it, and I think it describes you in many ways. Entrepreneurial, like, let's work. Let's be like entrepreneurs and build things and look to Genesis 1 and be inspired by the creative God who created us. But the pragmatism side sometimes gets narrow, and it's like, well, how do we make our app better? And how much do our ethics, focus us, and that sort of thing would be my concern with something like hopeful entrepreneurial pragmatism, that it risks just being the Christian version of Silicon Valley, where, again, you're just moving fast and breaking things. You're just accelerating for the sake of a hope in technology. And so that's where I think Christianity offers a better story. You can talk about specifics with a lot of, like, Sora and Grok and Devin, but, like, what is the story that all of this is part of? What's the beginning, middle, and end of the story?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, like, it provides, like, the bigger purpose, right? That, like, of humanity, and that's, like, super important. And I think as you were talking, I realized this is just, like, the classic entrepreneurial background that I have. I just have these, like, ideas, and, like, I know what's happening in the AI space right now for lead generation. You actually might be interested in this. They look at opportunities and, like, look at data from LinkedIn and say, like, hey, like, this person is actually researching these things, and this is their role at the company, and this is what they do. And then it actually goes to you as, like, a salesperson and says, like, this is their ranking and propensity to buy, and, like, how valuable they are. And it's like, fully AI improved now. And it's like the level of qualified leads is a lot better. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you probably could do something similar with, like, where are people in their Christian journey, like, even propensity evangelism to convert. Yeah. So I think those type of things aren't, well, I haven't heard, but they could be created with AI powering them and, like, fit into that broader narrative of the, like, Christian story of AI.
Yeah, we've heard many stories of successful implementation of social media for saving souls. Even in my own church, literally 3 people were saved, baptized. Why?
Oh.
They started listening to someone on TikTok who is a Christian evangelist on TikTok from Alberta. And they're based in Kitchener. And they're watching these TikTok videos, and then they join his Bible study, and he's actually teaching them the Bible. And they're like, this is great. The Bible sounds awesome. And he's like, yeah, you need to join a church and be baptized. So let me look for churches in your area, connects them to Grandview, of my church that I'm a part of. And then they get baptized here at our church, and they're still part of our church. Like, they're growing in Christ, right? I don't know them that well. We have a big church, so I'm not, like, personally connected. And overseas in Iran, there's been great success with missionaries using Facebook ads. And people will say, I had a dream about Jesus, and then the next day I saw a Facebook ad about Jesus. So I messaged, and I met with someone, and now I'm reading the Bible and learning the truth about Jesus. And so these things are happening. Why can't we do that with AI? Right? Yeah. So we should ask when we have, J.Y. Kim, he's coming out with a new book. And so we're going to talk to him about that new book. And we should ask him about this, because he's a big proponent of using data analytics as part of his church. He's a pastor. And we should ask him if he's thought about using AI as part of his ministry. Now, his book isn't about that. His book's more about the life of a Christian and the need for listening in our fast-paced world, which we'll get into as well. But yeah, it does seem like there's an opportunity to leverage this technology. At the same time, there's all these ethical, like, are we using ChatGPT despite the fact that they stole the data? You know, like there's these ethical conundrums, and we need to really reflect and use our conscience. And, you know, I'll never forget there was an intern at my company. I worked at a tech company for 5 years, and there was an intern that joined the marketing team and refused to use the data provided to marketing via the marketing software that we were using. Refused to, on ethical grounds, because it was illegal in Europe, not illegal in Canada. So it was okay in Canada. Technically, our company was not breaking the law. But it was definitely a gray area because Europeans, they, with GDPR and the data analytic regulations there, and so they said no, and they were given other job tasks to do. And I just respect that. I respect Christians who are willing to say, you know what, I'm not going to participate in this product because I have ethical concerns. And I think we just all need to take note of that. Even myself, when I was a salesperson, like I worked in sales at the tech company, one of the pieces of feedback I got from one sales coach is, you're too honest. You should let the customers yes be yes. Don't tell them it's going to be a lot of work with implementation. Right. I'm like, I'm going to be honest with them. Yeah, I don't need to tell them every piece of the process, but anyways, so yeah, there's a lot to say. I think there's a lot to say here.
And we talked a bunch about AI actually this time, but you mentioned TikTok and ethics, and it's also quite pertinent with it. The Congress ruling in the States to order ByteDance to divest their ownership, which is really just being said they need to ban it, or TikTok's getting banned. But that's not exactly what it is. But it's interesting because it does touch on, what are the ethics of a platform that clearly is useful and can like have an impact.
TikTok is clearly useful? What?
Yeah, I mean, I was
because of the people that were saved through my church. Yeah.
And I was thinking, hey, WWJT should probably have a TikTok in the beginning of this year. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna like do this, and then I started remembering that, oh, actually this stuff is still happening in the background, so maybe not invest on that platform, right? But yeah, there's like an ethical concern, I guess, if you call it ethics, on a foreign entity having access to data and being able to kind of manipulate and have propaganda served, suppressing and kind of empowering different themes and stories, right? Which is a general social media thing. The only difference is now it's a foreign entity who has that power rather than an internal entity.
Yeah, foreign entity. Just like a Canadian company could be a foreign entity according to a US. But yeah, there's levels of trust. And certainly China has not shown itself to be trustworthy on some geopolitical matters. So yeah, you got concerns there, and I think they're legitimate concerns. And if I was voting on the US Senate, I'd probably be like, yeah, I think we should not ban TikTok, but require TikTok to not share their data and be a subsidiary of the Chinese government. It needs to have clear separation. And TikTok would defend themselves, and they'd see, like, the CEO has talked about, oh, it's based in like this other thing, and there's this sort of thing. It's like, I think they're drawing a line in the sand, and I think it's worth the government stepping in on some of these matters. I mean, it raises all these questions like, how much should the government step in and that sort of thing. But we do need some of this regulation. And you say it's not related to AI, but it is related to AI. Like TikTok is so algorithmic AI based. That's right. How they became successful. And no doubt the data in the background on what videos to push or not push. Like there have been studies on this. It's interesting, like there's a research paper on YouTube, and, just to understand, like, what are the videos on YouTube? And the researchers talked about in this paper how difficult it is to get good data, because YouTube doesn't share it with them, right? So they don't have good data. And so they need to like manually create accounts or use some sort of process to create accounts and then see what the algorithm does. But then you're dealing with a small sample size. But you just, that's the way you do it. Or you use random samples of different YouTube hashes in order to discover things. And so anyways, so they're just talking through this difficulty, and it actually relates to another paper. You know, we're thinking about ethics, we're thinking about AI. You know, AI researchers are predominantly in, not in academia anymore. They're working at these big tech companies. Nearly 70% of people with PhDs in AI end up in private industry. Now, 2 decades ago, that was only 21%. There was way more people working in AI in academia, whereas now it's like, obviously, the big tech companies are buying them out. In 2022, the tech industry created 32 significant machine learning models, while academics produced 3, a significant reversal from 2014, when the majority of AI breakthroughs originated in universities. And so we're just seeing this lack of transparency. And this is how it all relates back to TikTok, AI, our shifting sands of where we're at right now. There's a lack of transparency because the researchers are in big tech. They need to follow the money there, or they end up following the money there. They don't want to speak publicly on the harms of AI because that might ruin the income that they have. You have governments, at least in China, that get involved for their own purposes. And yeah, just it's a lot of shifting sands. And so this is what brings me back to this, to like, what story does this all connect into? And what are we doing this for? Why are we building? Why are you on TikTok? Like, the why question is often answered with the story. And we need a good story. Do we follow this kind of myth of progress that hopes for a technological future that will rescue us from our current moment? Or are we hopeful for a teleological future, rooted in God, rooted in what his purposes are? And so, yeah, there is a beginning, middle, and end of the story. And the beginning is a good world that was tainted by sin. And the middle of the story is that we should create technology to push back the curse. Like, we are created to do that, just like Noah was created to, build the ark, just like building the temple. There's many good ways we could build technology, but it's not for this salvific end. And that's what we're seeing with the accelerationists. That's what we're seeing with some of these move fast and break things. We're seeing a level of disruption that is harmful to humanity, and we need to be more thoughtful.
I think we often ask, like, would Jesus use X technology? And we've asked this about AI. So I don't think it's like a question of would Jesus use it. Now the question is, like, how would Jesus kind of align his disciples and give a mandate and be like, this is how you should use it? Like, kind of create a little bit more structure. Or how might he do that if he was standing in front of us today and clearly able to, without confusion, say, listen, all you Christians, this is what you need to be doing with technology? What do you think he might say?
There's, because I've been reading a bunch of different things, I'm like, oh man, I got a whole bunch of new like things I'm thinking about right now. One of the things I'm thinking about is how Jesus wants us to be happy. I know it's not the place you thought I was going to go, but he wants us to be happy. He wants us to find joy. And I don't think joy comes through a dependence on technology to live. There's a difference between riding your bike to work and having the satisfaction of getting there and feeling like you're exercised versus driving a car. And there's a sense of which, when we use our human body and recognize our own limits, and we don't try to overcome those limits with superpowers, but we just exist as we are, that we become fulfilled and we really find joy. And we find happiness. So yeah, like I think Jesus, yeah, there are ways in which he would use technology, and like interestingly, like Jesus used different things in his day without worrying about how it might have been ethically tainted, so to speak. Like he still spoke in the synagogues, despite the fact that the synagogue was tainted with hypocrisy and legalism, as an example, right? Like you can still work within spaces like Jesus did without with still being free from sin, right? You still need to have a faithful presence in our technological world. If you're a Christian working in tech, be a faithful presence there, but be faithful and be willing to say no where you need to say no, and say yes where you need to say yes, I guess is kind of a vague way of stating it, but you got to allow for individual conscience on some of the particulars.
No, that's true.
And so I never want to be legalistic myself when it comes to like even something like whether or not you should use AI or whether or not you should use TikTok. If you're a Christian and you use TikTok every day and you don't find yourself pulled towards sin, and you can use it in good motives and moderation, and you don't overcome it. I just wrote an article for the Gospel Coalition on like exposing the good in digital distraction. Yeah, it's not as good as reading your Bible, but it's not necessarily evil either to like laugh at a funny meme about some basketball move or whatever, like whatever you're watching on TikTok. I don't know, like maybe it is actually sinful in and of itself what you're doing. You're lusting, you're engaged in envy, whatever, pride, there could be, so you got to check yourself with that. But yeah, like I don't want to be legalistic. Like a lot of our podcasts, sometimes we're like navigating these gray areas in order to help Christians think about these sorts of things, and maybe help people who aren't Christian think about how Christians think about these things, to just try to bring more thought to the space and figure it out for ourselves. Because I'm not an expert on it, and neither are you, Joel. We're still figuring it out.
No, we're figuring it out together.
So until next time, anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, definitely. It was a good answer. It wasn't exactly the direction I thought you might take it, but I think it's true. I think, and you mentioned some really good things. We don't want to be legalistic, and maybe the direction that I was maybe leaning into is like, hey, like we gotta rally the troops. We gotta, make that AI evangelical thing. And I think, I think it's about like all those statements can be good in light of, achieving like the Great Commission, right? In light of the biblical basis for that direction. So I think, we have the Bible where we can look to inspiration to be like, hey, this is a command that he's asked us to do, take care of the poor or do this. And this is something we can actually do better by leveraging tools that we have today. Right. And I think that's where the reflection for me is like, okay, if you have something that you feel you're being called to do as a builder or someone who can support a builder, it's like find kind of like the biblical text and then go from there and build on that. Right. And that might be a really, really powerful thing. Simon Sinek has that start with why whole narrative where it's like you really have to find your why that kind of propels you to keep moving forward. And I think for Christians, that is something that could allow you to have that persistence and grit to build something in this space that could move the needle.
No, that's well said. And and if you're called, like we're all going to be called to different things. We're all going to be gifted in different areas. And so maybe for you, you're going to be a builder who isn't going to know all the ethical ramifications of everything, but you're going to do your best to be thoughtful about it. All 16 different nodes or aspects of whatever I'm forgetting the language that Derek Sherman used in that episode, right? Like you're thinking about aesthetics, you're thinking about humanity, you're thinking about numbers, you're thinking about data, you're thinking about the pros and cons of each of those 16 areas. You're not just isolating yourself because you're always fully human. And yet you're also recognizing that you're limited. You need one another. You need different people's skills and expertise. So some people should be starting a company right now. because it's a really good time to start a company in AI. And you should build a Christian company, and others should be starting a PhD to help the church be more thoughtful about it. And others should be like quitting their job and going into pastoral ministry because we need more pastors right now. There's a shortage. So like, there's a lot of good things people could be doing. You got to follow God. You got to be faithful. And we hope you do that. And we hope to help you in that. Thank you for listening to this episode. Mostly on AI. Once again, What Would Jesus AI is not going to be the new name of our podcast, but we're going to have to deal with it because it really is just like the internet was the foundation of many technologies. AI is the foundation of many technologies, as we talked about today. Thank you, Joel, for your insights. Thank you to our Patreon supporters. Really appreciate, some of your encouragement over the last little bit. And if you want to follow us on Twitter, you can. We don't use our Instagram account that much, but we have one there too. You can follow us there. And if you enjoyed this episode and it's been helpful for you to think through some things, just send it to someone else. Send a quick link to it or a screenshot of it to one other person and say, hey, I found that this podcast was helpful for me. You should take a listen. And thanks for doing that. All right. Take care, everybody. Use tech, find rest, glorify God. Bye.
Bye-bye.